Hi everyone, welcome to Truth and Heart Unfiltered with Pam Glenn, that's me. For those of you who have not yet checked out my first 3 posts, I'm a certified nurse midwife talking about relationship abuse, one post at a time. Now my previous video or post focused on the topic of stereotypes that we might hold in our mind about abuse, about abusers, and about victims. And as I explain in that post, the problem with stereotypes is that in the situation of relationship abuse, it's like having the blinders on and keeping us from seeing the reality that somebody maybe very close to us, maybe sitting right in front of us, might be in this situation. But because of the stereotypes we hold in our brains, we don't see it. We don't even consider that it's even a possibility. So I hope you check out that 3rd post. And for today, I'm going to be offering and talking about a definition of abuse. I also plan to provide a basic understanding of what drives abusers to do abusive behaviors. Do I have all the answers to this? Not at all. It can be very complex and sometimes even simply baffling. But I will provide you with a basic guideline so that you can have a basic understanding of what drives abusers to do abusive behavior. So let's begin with a definition of abuse. I use this definition that came from the University of Michigan long ago. They define abuse as this: it's the intentional use of abusive tactics in order to obtain and maintain power and control over an intimate partner, or I would add over another human being. So there's some key words in this definition. The first key word is it's intentional. It's not someone just losing their cool, getting angry, getting upset. It is an intentional act. You might see anger in the mix, but it's not the cause. Secondly, it's all about abusers obtaining and maintaining power and control over their partner. Again, this isn't about the abuser losing their cool. It's not about them having an anger issue. In fact, here's what a men's therapist who worked with abusers shared at a conference I attended long ago. He said, anger management is not an accurate term in these situations because it assumes that violence comes from anger, but rather violence or abuse comes from the need to have power and control over another person. Here's a succinct way to kind of pull all that together in one phrase. Abusers act not because they're out of control, but out of the need to control. So we may ask, why do abusers have this huge need to have power and control over another person? We could talk about all the reasons all day. Research has been done. It can be very complex. There's not just one answer to that question. But here's a few possible scenarios that I'll just put out there. Maybe this is what the abuser has known their whole life. Maybe their whole life, all the relationships around them have only involved abusive behaviors. That's all they know. That may be. Or maybe they were abused at some point in their lives or even in childhood. Power and control was taken away from them. Their boundaries were violated. This may be a way, not a healthy way, but a way for them to try to regain control by trying to have power and control over someone else. That's possible as well. And by the way, this is not an excuse for people to abuse, but this is simply trying to understand what is the underlying issue driving them to do these abusive behaviors. What drives them to want to have and have this huge need for power and control over another person. All right. Now, last but not least, and I'm just touching on some possible scenarios. For many abusers, they are very aware of what they're doing. It's very calculated. Remember the Michigan definition of abuse. It's intentional. Again, it's the intentional use of abusive tactics in order to obtain and maintain power and control over an intimate partner. And then once again, abusers act not because they're out of control, but because of the need to control. When we keep that in our minds, it can help to understand and explain why we see the specific behaviors that we often do with abusive relationships. Now, in future posts, I'm going to be breaking down and explaining the actual specific behaviors of abuse, one post at a time, so more to come on that in my future posts. So let me digress for just a moment. The question has occasionally come up when I give these talks. So what's the difference between an abuser and someone who occasionally has done an unhealthy behavior towards their partner, a behavior maybe you would describe as abusive? Here's how this question has also come up when I've given previous talks. I think I may have mentioned, but I used to go into the high school health classes and talk about dating abuse. Now, one of the schools I went to allowed me to have an hour and a half with these students, and that gave me some extra time for them to journal the last 10 to 15 minutes of this presentation. I wanted to hear, what are your thoughts, your feelings, your aha moments? What might you still have questions about? And anything else they wanted to write about. I also shared with them, I am going to collect your journals and you do not have to put your name on it. Now, it was an incredible learning experience to read their journals. Sadly, so many had already experienced abuse, including dating abuse. Some wrote, though, however, and this was to me very revealing and very enlightening. Some wrote, after hearing about abuse, I realized that I've been doing some of these behaviors towards my boyfriend or towards my girlfriend or partner. And they added, and I want to make a change. I don't want to do those behaviors anymore now that I understand this better. I never even saw it before. I thought, wow, that is simply amazing. How awesome. So again, it's been asked, am I an abuser if I've done a couple of these behaviors towards my partner? If these abusive behaviors have crept into our relationship every now and then? I think these are excellent and even tough questions. I would say that probably most, if not all, relationships have had some unhealthy moments. Just as the students acknowledged, I've done that. I think it's also important to acknowledge that we've all probably have likely had moments where we didn't handle things well with a partner, where maybe what we said was hurtful, was inappropriate, unhealthy. And I'm a big believer in naming things for what they are. Maybe these were abusive behaviors. And hopefully from these moments, you as a couple can talk things through, you can learn from each other, you can grow and find healthy and better ways to communicate during times of conflict or just times that are just simply frustrating or challenging. And I know that it's not always easy. But for the sake of these presentations, let me establish this. When I refer to an abuser or an abusive relationship, I'm referring to when the abusive behavior is well established. It's a routine way of operating within the relationship by the abuser towards their partner who is on the receiving end. And when I refer to an abuser during my talks here, I'm referring to someone who fits the definition, and again, when there's a well-established pattern of abusive behaviors, where it's clearly an attempt that that person wants to obtain and maintain power and control over their partner. So, as an FYI, throughout my posts, I'll be referring to the abuser and to the partner to clearly differentiate between the two and to better understand the information that I'm presenting much better. So my next post is going to focus on types of abuse. And again, later we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the actual abusive behaviors. We'll break those down one post at a time. But the next post, we'll talk about the categories or types of abuse. As always, please check out the video description for the hotline numbers if you need assistance. And if you're in any kind of emergency situation, please always call 911. And a couple more things. I urge you to subscribe to my posts and turn on the notifications so that you can be alerted right away when I have a new post out there. And one more thing. I encourage you to pass this YouTube link on to others because you just never know how this information might positively or significantly impact their lives. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.